Right now, somewhere in the world, a person is lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, desperate for sleep. It feels like torture, and in 1947, according to one of the most terrifying stories ever told on the internet, a group of Soviet scientists decided to find out what if it actually was. The Soviet sleep experiment. You've probably heard the name. Maybe you've seen the image, that skeletal figure, hollow-eyed, pressed against glass. The story has circulated for decades, shared in hushed tones across Reddit threads and horror forums, presented as classified Soviet research so disturbing that the files were buried for 50 years. 5 prisoners, an experimental gas, 30 days without sleep, and results so horrific that the researchers allegedly destroyed the entire project. Here's what almost nobody tells you. This story is a complete fabrication, but here's what's even more fascinating: the truth behind it. The real science, the real Soviet experiments, and the real psychology of why millions of people desperately wanted this to be real is genuinely more disturbing than the fiction. Stay with me. The Internet, October 2009. You are sitting in a dimly lit room, the blue glow of a monitor illuminating your face. You've just clicked a link titled The Russian Sleep Experiment. The page loads on Creepypasta.com, a website dedicated to user-submitted horror fiction. You begin reading. Within minutes, your hands are cold. The story describes a Soviet-era experiment conducted in the late 1940s. 5 political prisoners are sealed inside a chamber and exposed to an experimental stimulant gas. The researchers promise them freedom after 30 days without sleep. Days pass. The subjects begin behaving normally, then strangely, then catastrophically. They stop sleeping. They stop eating. They begin mutilating themselves. When researchers finally breach the chamber, what they find inside defies every law of human biology. The writing is clinical, specific. It reads like a declassified report, not a campfire story.
The author was a user named Orange Soda. His real identity has never been definitively confirmed. The story was submitted as original fiction, clearly labeled as such on the platform. It was, in every technical and legal sense, a made-up horror story. But then, something happened that Orange Soda almost certainly did not anticipate. The story escaped. Within months, it had been copied, pasted, and reposted across thousands of forums, without the fiction label. Someone added the phrase, reportedly based on classified Soviet documents. Someone else added, corroborated by a nurse who worked in a Moscow archive. Each retelling stripped away another layer of fictional context and added another layer of false authority. By 2011, the story was circulating on mainstream Facebook pages with captions like, "The experiment they don't want you to know about." Here is the first counterintuitive fact that should stop you cold. Misinformation does not spread because people are stupid. It spreads because the story fills an emotional need that the truth cannot. The Soviet sleep experiment wasn't just scary, it was satisfying. It confirmed something people already suspected, that governments run sinister experiments on helpless citizens, that there are things science has done that we are not allowed to know, that the human body hides horrors beneath its ordinary surface. The story gave shape to a shapeless anxiety, and that, more than any clever writing, is why it survived. Moscow, 1952. You are a researcher. You wear a white coat. You do not ask questions about where your subjects come from. Here is where the story gets genuinely disturbing, because while the sleep experiment itself never happened, the Soviet Union's actual history of human experimentation is not fiction. It is documented, verified, and in many ways far more chilling than any internet horror story. The most terrifying real program was called Kamera, Russian for the chamber. Established in 1921 under the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, Kamera was a covert laboratory whose sole purpose was developing untraceable poisons that could kill without detection. Real human beings, prisoners, dissidents, and political enemies were used as test subjects. They were administered mustard gas, ricin, digitoxin, and dozens of experimental compounds, then observed as the substances worked through their systems. They were not told what they were being given. The program's most notorious director was Grigory Myronovsky, a physician and toxicologist who personally conducted experiments on prisoners throughout the 1930s and 40s. His notes, partially recovered after the Soviet collapse, describe subjects with the cold detachment of a man cataloging insects. He referred to his victims as passengers, people in transit between life and death, useful only for the data their bodies could generate. Myronovsky was eventually arrested in 1951, not for the experiments, but for political infractions. He served time, was released, and died in 1964. No one was ever tried for what happened inside Kamera. And here is the fact that history books rarely emphasize. Kamera was not a secret from the Soviet scientific establishment. Dozens of physicians, chemists, and state officials knew of its existence. The silence was not ignorance, it was compliance. Ordinary people with medical degrees and families and morning routines chose to participate, chose to look away, chose to file their paperwork and ask no questions. That is the true horror. Not a monster in a sealed chamber, bureaucratic evil conducted in offices with filing cabinets and lunch breaks. But the Soviets were not alone in this history, and that context matters enormously. Washington, D.C., April 13, 1953. On this exact date, CIA Director Allen Dulles authorized a program that would become one of the most controversial in American history. Project MKUltra. You need to understand this because it is the real reason the Soviet sleep experiment feels true even when you know it isn't. MKUltra was a covert program of human experimentation run by the CIA designed to investigate mind control, behavioral modification, and interrogation techniques. Over 150 documented research projects were conducted across 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, and mental health facilities, many of them without the knowledge or consent of the subjects. Participants were given LSD without warning. They were subjected to electroconvulsive therapy at extreme levels. They were kept in sensory deprivation chambers for days. They were hypnotized, psychologically manipulated, and in documented cases, they died. The program ran for 21 years, from 1953 to 1973. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKUltra files. Most were shredded. In 1977, a filing error led investigators to a surviving cache of approximately 20,000 documents that had been misfiled in a financial records room. These documents formed the basis of a Senate investigation that same year.
Here is what those documents confirmed. The United States government, using taxpayer money, ran a secret program that tortured its own citizens in the name of science and then destroyed the evidence. When people share the Soviet sleep experiment and insist it must be real, this is the shadow they are standing in. They are not being paranoid. They are being historically informed. Governments have done these things. The instinct that says they're hiding something was, in the case of MKUltra, entirely correct. The problem is not the suspicion. The problem is directing it toward a story someone wrote on a horror fiction website in 2009. Stanford University Sleep Research Center, present day. Now let's talk about what actually happens when human beings are deprived of sleep, because the science is strange enough to need no embellishment. You go 24 hours without sleep. Cognitive performance drops to the equivalent of a blood alcohol level of 0.10%, legally drunk in every US state. Your reaction time slows. Your emotional regulation collapses. Small frustrations become unbearable. At 48 hours, the brain begins to do something extraordinary and terrifying. It starts stealing sleep anyway. Microsleeps, episodes of unconsciousness lasting between half a second and 30 seconds, begin occurring without your awareness or control. You can be standing, walking, even driving, and your brain will simply check out for a moment. You will have no memory of it. At 72 hours, 3 days, the situation becomes genuinely psychiatric. Hallucinations begin. Not subtle ones, vivid, terrifying, indistinguishable from reality. Paranoia sets in. The boundary between waking and dreaming dissolves. You begin to lose the ability to identify where you are, who you are, what is real. The longest documented human experiment in sleep deprivation was conducted by Randy Gardner in 1964. He was a 17-year-old high school student in San Diego who stayed awake for 264 hours and 24 minutes. Exactly 11 days under medical supervision by Stanford researcher Dr. William Dement. By day 4, Gardner was experiencing full paranoid delusions. By day 11, he had difficulty completing sentences, experienced severe memory loss, and showed signs of profound cognitive breakdown. He slept for 14 hours and 40 minutes afterward and recovered fully. Here is what the Soviet sleep experiment gets catastrophically wrong. Sleep deprivation does not make people stronger. It does not strip away the social facade to reveal a savage interior self. It makes people weaker, more confused, more fragile. The brain does not become a weapon. It becomes a wounded animal. The creepypasta premise that without sleep humans transform into something supernatural and violent is not just scientifically wrong. It tells you something revealing about human psychology. We fear that beneath our civility there is a monster waiting. The sleep experiment gave that fear a face. This is the question that no one asks, and it is the most important one. By 2015, polling of online communities showed that somewhere between 15 and 25% of readers encountered the Soviet sleep experiment story believed it was a factual account, not horror fiction, not urban legend, history. And when corrected, when shown the creepypasta source, the labeled fiction tag, the absence of any corroborating document from any archive anywhere in the world, many of them pushed back. But governments do cover things up. True. But the Soviets did experiment on prisoners. Also true. How do you know this specific story isn't real? This is where it gets philosophically interesting. You cannot prove the absence of a secret. That is the epistemological trap at the heart of every conspiracy. Once you accept that the evidence against it could itself be part of the cover-up, the theory becomes permanently unfalsifiable. It can never be disproven because disproof is just more proof of the conspiracy. But here is what is provable. Orange Soda's original story was posted as fiction. The Creepypasta archive date stamps its submissions. The story's internal biology is impossible. The gas described would require a delivery mechanism that has never existed. The physical descriptions of the subjects violate every known principle of human physiology. Declassified documents cited in later retellings have never materialized in any archive, in any country, under any freedom of information request, in any language. The story is fiction. Brilliantly written, emotionally resonant, culturally sticky fiction. And yet, music, swell, something almost mournful. There is something worth honoring in the instinct that made people believe it. The rage at government secrecy is legitimate. The knowledge that experiments like Kamera and MKUltra actually happen is legitimate. The fear that science can be weaponized against the powerless is historically justified 100 times over. The Soviet sleep experiment is a myth, but myths do not survive for 15 years because they are false. They survive because they contain a truth that facts alone cannot carry. 5 prisoners, a sealed chamber, a gas that steals sleep and rewrites the mind. None of it happened. All of it matters. Because the reason this story refuses to die is not gullibility, it's grief. A grief for the real victims of real programs that most people will never learn about in school. Kamera's nameless passengers, MKUltra's unwitting subjects, the long global history of power treating human beings as raw material. The Soviet sleep experiment gave that grief a story to live inside. Now you know the real one. And the real one, the documented history of state-sanctioned horror, the genuine science of what sleeplessness does to a human mind, the psychology of why we need monsters to be real, is something no one should look away from. If this changed how you think about the stories we share and why we share them, hit subscribe, because that question, why do humans need certain stories to be true, is one we're going to keep pulling apart on this channel. Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. And tonight, when you're lying awake at 3 a.m., remember, the real history is always stranger and always more important than the legend.